All right, it is 6 o'clock. Are we ready to begin?
Okay, well, it is 6. Okay, now it is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, February 27th, and I would like to call the City of Lacey Council Work Session to order. Just a couple quick announcements. We do have a slight amendment to the agenda after item 5C, just for our employee recognition. Just an announcement. There's just an announcement there. And attendance wise, all are present with the exception of Mayor Ryder, who could not make it tonight. And I'll also read the land acknowledgement, which goes as: we, the City of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who were absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors and their descendants who are still here. We recognize and respect the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, and city to develop as it is today. We recommend that the community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. And with that, I would like a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as published.
Second. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any questions about the agenda? No? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an approved agenda. And first item on our agenda tonight is the Lacey Neighborhood Grant Program Review on our Community Relations Specialist, Jenny Bowersfeld.
Thank you. I'm gonna pull up some slides here really quick. So thank you for the opportunity. Sorry. Good. Perfect. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to share about the grant program. I'm going to just go over brief background. I know that we have a new council member with us and some that I've never presented to. It usually goes to a committee. So I appreciate the opportunity to come before everybody and just share about this program that our council reinstated in 2017. And just talk about what took place in 2023 and what is coming up in this year of 2024. So I believe the city used to have an old neighborhood grant program years and years ago that I think was run through our Parks Department. But in 2017, council decided to approve $25,000 in that budget to reinvest into the community, create a sense of community pride within our neighborhoods, get community involvement going. And that year was kind of the first kickoff year. And it was a great success. You know, just as word was spreading, I think we saw about, let's see, we had 7 HOAs submit in 2017, and the city issued about $11,000 and $850 in grant funds. Just to show the growth to 2023, this last year, we had a response from 41 HOAs requesting grant funds, and the city issued just over $63,000. So it has really gained some momentum, and I hear a lot of great feedback every year about how appreciative our HOAs are for this program and the opportunity to receive money to help fund some of their projects.
63?
What's that?
63, you said?
Mhm.
I thought we capped it at 60.
Well, there's some rollover funds from previous years that,
Rollover.
yeah. We'll go over a little bit more of a deeper dive into what the funds look like for 2023 in just a bit. But some of the grant eligibility, so they must be located within the city of Lacey to be eligible to apply. The project has to have a lasting or direct benefit to the neighborhood and the community, must be nonprofit in nature, and there is a probation period for incomplete projects from the prior year. So if an HOA applies, receives funds, but does not complete their project, that they're on probation for the following year and are ineligible to participate for 1 year. Some of the grant guidelines, so this is a matching reimbursement program. The city will reimburse up to 50% of a project cost, not to exceed $2,500. So each neighborhood can get a maximum of $2,500 depending on the total cost of their project. It does require a dollar for dollar neighborhood match, and volunteer hours and in-kind donations can be eligible to meet that neighborhood match, which I would say about half the time is the case. They do submit some volunteer hours to help meet their match. And projects must meet city codes, ordinances, and non-discrimination policies. I do review with a committee from different city staff. Everybody reviews every application that comes through to make sure that everything is in compliance. If there's tree work or tree removals that are being requested, then we make sure that all of the proper permitting is done and in place. And then it is open to formally recognized HOAs and informal neighborhoods. So last year, council requested that we open it up to informal neighborhoods as well. So those that aren't formally governed by documents, CCNRs or bylaws, they don't have a formal board member, board present. They're able to apply, and we did receive one application last year from an informal neighborhood. And that was for a stormwater maintenance, stormwater facility maintenance, which was really helpful to them since it's just the homeowners. That cost is being divided between the homeowners. So they really appreciated that they had the opportunity to do that. These are the different grant categories that we have identified that folks can apply for. So neighborhood beautification, safe neighborhoods, and disaster preparedness. So we've had some that seek funds to help prepare their neighborhoods and create disaster preparedness plans and equipment, things like that, which is a great use of the money. Environmental sustainability and resiliency, board education and organization development, compassion. We've had some requests for like the free little libraries in neighborhoods, community gardens, things like that, neighborhood art and monument structures. So a lot of people refurbish their monument signs just to make the entrance to their neighborhood look more beautiful. And then national night out community events. We have a lot of neighborhoods in our city, as you guys are aware, that participate. So they can get some reimbursement funds to help fund their barbecues and things that they put on for neighborhoods or for their neighbors. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the completed projects in 2023. I tried to capture, there's multiple HOAs or neighborhoods that apply for some sort of beautification or community park improvements. So trying to capture the different categories that we received and issued grants for. So irrigation improvements and weed removals, new playground equipment, a couple secure mailboxes in neighborhoods, repairs to fences, Jubilee refreshed their traffic circle landscaping, which is they're responsible for that. So some new picnic tables, removal of some hazard trees and trimming, and then just open space beautification. So any projects that are awarded funds need to be within their open space or common areas. Of course, we're not gonna fund any grant projects or that are, on private property. So all of that stuff is looked at when we're going through the projects and approving those. Just wanted to provide a few images to show some of the projects that were done. So this is Wedgewood HOA. They did some beautification. They cleaned out some weeds and kind of reestablished those lines between the grass and the dirt and beauty bark. So they had a lot of volunteer groups come out and work over the course of a weekend and did some great work, and they were really happy with the outcome, and we're very grateful for the support from the council. Shadywood HOA, they had a pretty big undertaking for their stormwater facility, which was very costly. So we have a great water resources team that has been busy out in the community identifying different storm facilities that need maintenance and that have been outdated and neglected for many, many years. However, it can feel very overwhelming to our HOAs or neighborhoods because it's very expensive to fix these facilities. So they actually did phase one in 2022 and received grant funds and made a good dent on things, but this was phase two, which just included excavating some of the built up sediment, restoring it with the riprap rock from preventing erosion. And they cut the overgrowth vegetation to establish an access path. And yeah, it was necessary to comply with the City of Lacey stormwater facility maintenance requirements. So that was a great project that was completed. And then Northridge Estates, they had some old benches that were a safety concern. So they removed those and purchased some new benches, put them together and established new cement platforms for them to be secured to.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
So for like that last project, are
Mhm.
are we supplying engineering support for this or for them, or are they hiring outside or?
they hire outside companies. So some of our water resources staff, they will actually go out and walk through the facility with the board members or somebody in charge of the project and identify like, here are some of the things that you need to have done. And then I believe that the city has, our water resources department has a list of some suggested reputable companies to work with to do this kind of work. So then it's on the HOA to reach out to that company and then they come in and do the work for them. But sometimes they are able to cut down on some of the costs by removing some of the brush themselves. Some of them choose to do what they can themselves just through work parties.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So those are just a couple of examples of some of the great work that is being done and the results in our community. So these are some of the grant statistics for 2023. We actually had 41 applications submitted. 2 were not approved. 1 was outside the City of Lacey limits, and then 1 HOA was on probation from not completing their project the prior year. So we had 39 approved grant projects. Last year, we did have 2 that were not complete, so those will now be on probation for 2024. And we had, so that was 37 completed projects in 2023. The total funding requested that came in was 81,471. We did have $79,000 available just from carryover from the previous year. And then just the actual funding issue that went out was $66,000. And that is just as people apply for grants, they are doing their best effort to give an estimated project cost, but maybe, at the end of the day, it didn't cost that much as what they thought. So the money that we set aside for each of those neighborhoods, they didn't fulfill all of that. So they're not reprimanded for that or anything, but we just have funds left over. So that will be.
Is there any instances where they don't finish the project in the calendar year and then they can reapply and use other monies the following year to finish it?
No, if they get awarded money in like 2023, then the requirement is that they complete that project and submit their documentation that everything's paid for within that calendar year.
That's what I remember, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was the chair of the community relations, so
Yeah.
I want to make sure everybody knew that.
Yep. So then whatever money is left over at the end of the year, we do submit that request for carryover into the next year. So the projected 2023 carryover was 13,342, which I think you'll be hearing later this evening, that request. And then looking ahead, so applications are currently open right now for the 2024 grants, and they will be open until the end of March. So they are due on March 30th. And I will be reviewing those applications during the first few weeks of April, along with a few key staff from some other departments, just to make sure everything is in compliance and looks good. And then I will be reaching out to all the groups to send them a notice of approval and funding during the week of April 22nd through the 26th. And then again, they have to have their project completion done by the end of the year, 2024. So including the 2023 carryover request, our total grant funds this year will be $73,342.
Question,
Yes.
since There is quite a bit more than the 60,000 that we've been giving.
Mhm.
Is the cap still 2,500 or,
It is.
okay?
How much do we credit for volunteer hours?
Yeah, I usually go by the independent sector, the value of their volunteer time that they identify. And so this year it's $31.80 per hour.
So it looks like it's gaining some traction
It is.
and getting popular out there.
Yeah.
And it's probably producing some really good results. But having said that, are you anticipating like that in this next budget, we will be asked to increase the 60?
I think 60,000 is a great place to be right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I think with the carryover funds and just the, you know, the difference in like what the actual cost is of the projects to be completed to what they are estimated to be. I just think that there's enough flexibility there that we're meeting the needs of the neighborhoods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bill heard that.
Are there any other questions?
Just because I don't know,
Yes.
are we highlighting these in any way in the community with, sending them a Thurston Togger? Are there ways to broadcast, if we're beautifying a park or doing something?
Yeah, so I believe we have, Thurston Talk has done an article before, but we've talked about highlighting through just our social media as well, as projects are completed. I think that that's gonna be something that we institute this year. I'm gonna be trying to push for some good before and after pictures, because I think that that can be a really powerful picture of what's happening in the community and what the city and what the city council is providing.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, guys.
Well, thank you for bringing that.
Absolutely.
And so
Thank you.
the next item on our agenda is our comprehensive plan visioning, and our community and economic development director, Vanessa Dolby, and planning manager Ryan Andrews presenting. So-
Yeah.
Set up. I don't know if I thought it was in the, the insert that goes in the water bill. I thought it was in there, but.
It's a lot of projects.
Yeah, that's a lot of
A lot of
projects. And I'm just like, it's catching on.
My age was used it a couple of times.
Yeah.
Seems like great use of.
I'm a disorganized neighborhood, but I'm. I think we're organized now.
Okay, you have the floor.
All right, well, good evening, Deputy Mayor, member of the City Council. I want to thank you for having us here this evening to talk about comprehensive plan visioning, but I'm gonna just roll back a little bit if that's okay. I know I met a number of you informally about 2 weeks ago, and so I just thought I'd take this opportunity to formally introduce myself one more time. But as you know, I'm the new Community Economic Development Director. I've been here for about a month. But I come here from the city of Renton. Prior to that, I worked for Grant County. But if you go way back in my history, I actually grew up in the city of Olympia. And so taking this job and this opportunity here really feels like full circle for me coming back to my roots. I used to catch the bus for elementary school at the Hawks Prairie truck stop. So I have a little bit of history here, and it's really exciting to be a part of this team. It's been great getting to know the staff in CED and at City Hall, and I'm really excited to be a part of this group. Lots of great people, and I'm excited to work with you all as well.
Welcome home.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So to that end, I won't delay any more about myself, and we are here tonight to talk about our comprehensive plan process, which will be a year-plus process, and kick it off with the visioning workshop. And I have Ryan and Hans here to take it away.
Yep, thanks for the introduction. Appreciate it, Vanessa. So Hans and I have a tool for you to use tonight to hopefully kind of gather some of your input, but then also hopefully create some discussion when it comes to what our 2025 comprehensive plan update will look like. And so one of the initial steps, we passed out a sheet of paper that has a QR code, login, and so at this point, this would be our opportunity to get logged in, make sure everything's working okay. We've got some test questions here. I think we have 3 people logged in at this point. So
There's a little thumbs up thing in the corner once you get to the screen, just to mark that you've arrived there. It should be a relatively empty screen at this point, but as we start moving through it, it'll be populated. You can access it either on your phones or on your tablets. Both should work, so whichever one works better for you. And there will be some typing questions, so I don't know. A keyboard.
Yeah, you want to make sure you're able to type.
Yeah, you're gonna be tested on this later. Looks like we're up to 5 at this point.
One more. Everybody
Is that me?
able to?
You're not in that, did you? Have you hit that thumbs up?
Yeah, you get the thumbs up.
All right, that looks like 6 of us.
Okay.
Everybody? All right, so I might just jump into it then.
So goals for today. Number one, we want to introduce you to our comprehensive plan update process and what that's going to look like. There's some information that we included in your packets that gives some kind of broad overview of the comprehensive plan. We're just going to kind of reiterate some of that. Do some visioning exercises. So sometimes what we hear from the council and what we've heard in the past is that the comprehensive plan sometimes doesn't reflect the priorities of the council. Often what we hear is, well, maybe those were decisions that were made by previous councils, regulations that maybe don't fit the current vision, those kinds of things. And so what we definitely want to do is make sure that we have all of your buy-in early and often throughout this process. It's very important that we get the broad community input as well, but we want to make sure that the council is brought along through this process. And this is hopefully a way that we can be able to jumpstart that. And then we have the discussions and the straw polling along the way that should hopefully give us some good information that we can take away. The benefit of Menti is that we can use this against you later. But
Be used to it by now.
Slightly nefarious.
But we can keep track of things along the way, make sure that when we're doing stuff, it's meeting with your vision and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're able to capture that tonight, but also the discussion that will happen. So we'll be keeping notes along the way tonight too. So about a little bit about the comprehensive plan. I think there's several of you that have been involved in previous comprehensive plan updates, whether you were on the council or maybe on the planning commission, but just as a review, our comprehensive plan is updated every 10 years. It used to be every 8 and now it's every 10 and it's kind of synced up. So about every 5 years, we're either updating our comprehensive plan or we're updating our shoreline master program. So this 5 years, we just got done with our shoreline master program about 4 or 5 years ago. So now it's time to update our comprehensive plan. We have several required elements. So everything, and we'll talk about this more in detail tonight, land use, housing, transportation, environment, those kinds of things. I did want to point out some of those things that we've already completed that we won't be working on, because you might be asking, well, what about this? And some of them are related to utilities. So we've recently completed a water system plan update. We've recently completed our parks, culture, and recreation comprehensive plan. We've also adopted our capital facilities plan update, as well as our stormwater plan. Those things aren't going to be what's part of the next comprehensive plan update. Essentially, everything else will be. So things like land use, transportation, housing, environment, climate, economic development, et cetera. So we are going to be hiring some consultants. We've already hired consultants to work through some of our economic development work. We're hiring consultants to help with our transportation element, as well as we're required to do a new climate resiliency element. That's a new state law that we'll get some help from a consultant on. And then we're also nearing the final contract signage with some technical expertise. One of the things I just wanted to let you know is that our next comprehensive plan, one of the ideas we're throwing out there at this point and kind of moving forward with is a fully online comprehensive plan. So where our comprehensive plans have sat kind of on the shelf as a static document in the past, this will actually be its own website that will be kind of fully interactive, fully linked. If you can, if you see a RCW reference or a Lacey Municipal Code reference or whatever, you'll be able to click on it, get to that reference directly. And so it'll be almost a standalone website that will act as our comprehensive plan. And I'll point out, I think originally in some of the documentation we'd had June 30th, 2025 was to be our update. That bill has passed the legislature and is sitting on the governor's desk to extend that to December 31st of 2025. So we get an extra 6 months, which is going to be much needed at this point. So at this point, we'll move into the polling, and this is where you come in. So we've got some initial questions that will kind of make sure that your tool's working right, making sure that we're collecting the right data. So the first question is, how many years have you lived in Lacey? If you were born here, then the year you were born, but otherwise the year that you moved here.
All right, it looks like we have 6, so it should be, I think everybody, yeah.
So most of the councils, more than 20 years. Couple on the shorter end of things, but for the most part, majority of the council, and I'd say if Mayor Ryder was here, he'd probably be on that end of things as well. Somebody is,
I'm logged in twice.
um,
I'm waiting for you guys to notice.
I'll send your $2 and I'll raise your floor.
All right.
all right, next question is, what first drew you to Lacey? And you're able to put in as many responses on this, up to 3, as you would like.
And this will be in word cloud format, so it's just kind of summary, frequently kind of reoccurring statements, words, things like that. But you can enter 3 different comments.
So
for this
each
one.
space only gets 1 word? Or
It
it can be
can be-
different?
it can be a
You can
multiple
do a
word.
paragraph, but it's gonna automatically pull out the common themes for you. Like we have 3 so far. But again, this is kind of more of just a test run on how to use the tool itself. Looks like we're up to 5 now. There's 6. But yeah, that's kind of how our word clouds work, and I'll revisit that in a little bit later.
Next question is, what was something about Lacey you found surprising after moving here? So this one is not a word cloud, right? It's a response. So we'll be able to see individual responses as they populate here. And I think on this one, you're able to put in multiple.
Yeah, so this one, you're able to enter in more than 1 comment. You're a good amount of typing going on right now. Okay. That looks like there's at least 6 in there, so we'll move on. These next couple questions actually get into quality of life style questions. This text on here is pulled from the World Health Organization. It's how our culture and values match with our goals, expectations, standards, and concerns. Just to give you kind of at least one definition of what quality of life could mean, but that might be different for each one of you. So this next question is, how would you rate the overall quality of life in Lacey? And the range is from 4 all the way up to excellent. The other end.
Loaded question. Quality of life as a 30-year-old when I got here versus quality of life 22 years
Quality of
later.
your life?
Right.
Yeah. And given these are still pretty general questions, but just conversation based, get things going.
I had more fun in Renton.
About your life, your age.
But
Maybe
yes,
waiting
I
for
love
one
it.
more.
It's here.
Then I have kids. That's more of have kids than.
Can't exactly open the weekly and just be there 20 minutes.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
because we go to a lot of
That
shows.
was kind of weird.
Then I have kids. It's not like.
So I hear a lot of discussions.
Sorry.
No, that's really good.
That's
And
what they're
that's
for.
what we want. Maybe we can, so it looks like we've got 5 answers. Somebody hasn't quite answered yet. But maybe you could explain, like I'm hearing some discussion, why do you think, it looks like far and away the answer is like good or excellent, right? So why is that? Just give us some of your opinions why you believe that it's good.
Cause it was a good place to raise a family. You could go from kindergarten or preschool all the way to graduate and get a doctorate. It's really close to airports, travel. You could do anything within 5 hours, like water ski or snow ski, bike, boat, fish, you name it. You could do it all.
It's a convenient distance from 2 large cities, Seattle and Portland.
but it has a small town feel.
That's kind of why, one of the main reasons we moved here when we moved to Washington was hour and a half from Portland, an hour from Seattle, hour and a half from Rainier, Mount Rainier, hour from Snoqualmie. I mean, you could be on the beach in an hour and a half, you can be in a big city, you can be wherever you want.
You could be in the rainforest, you could be in the desert, you could be on the beach, you could be on the lake, you name it, it's pretty much within an hour or two.
I missed Seattle a lot when I got here. It was, you know, if there was a comedy show, if there was somebody was playing, if there was an event, living in Renton, I could be at anything in 20 minutes. That was happening in Seattle. And then, you know, I moved here and it was like, there just didn't seem like a whole lot was going on. It closed early. I was like, man, I would say it slowed me down, but then I got used to the pace and really started to like it. But there was a lack of, you know, yeah, there wasn't any.
Amazing parks.
Deceptively lovely parks. We moved right next to one and didn't realize how big it was until we started to explore when we made the offer on the house. It's Wonderwood, and we thought it was a little tiny neighborhood park, and then we got lost. Accidentally, we were trying to find each other, we couldn't find each other, we didn't realize how big the park was.
People were friendly.
So I think for the previous question, how many were like born and raised in Lacey, council members?
Mayor.
Nobody. The mayor was like, so in general, kind of, it sounds like some people came from larger areas to live here. Like what brought you here? And we asked that question earlier, but maybe you want to kind of describe, because it sounds like, you know, there's access to the outdoors is important, those kinds of things, but also you need to live and work in the same place, right? Or, you know, you need to.
You used to.
Yeah. That, I think that, and I believe that's still a goal, you know, of a lot of the work we do is to make sure that we have that ability. What about Lacey, like in terms of those kinds of things brought you here? Was it a job? Was it, you know, maybe?
I moved here for a job opportunity,
So did
period.
I think our family left because of work. I mean, you could work in the mills back then, you know, a long time ago and stuff like that, but if you wanted to get, you know, a better paying job or whatever, you have to leave the area. But so we came back here actually, you know, because dad retired, didn't need a job anymore.
Despite employment.
Yeah.
He came back because he liked the place.
Reunite with family, I guess you'd say.
It's also a very safe and stable community. You know, the military influence, the veteran, the state employees, just the mix and variety of people that live together. It's just it's very broad, and we don't get affected by downturn. The economy is bad, so it's just a very stable place to raise a family. I think that business brought me here, but from my business, I can just see why people stay. And it really is that community aspect that you don't get in a lot of places.
We came from Florida, well, part of it was we wanted to get to Florida, but it was a good business opportunity for me here, but it could have been anywhere in Washington, actually, that opportunity, and chose here because we had been here once only before moving here. I just fell in love with it, liked it that much that we decided to move here.
What year was that?
2006.
I got a job in Olympia in 2014. And I did the commute from SeaTac to Olympia for about 2 months, and I said, nah. So I moved down here to Lacey and we bought a house in 2015 when housing was more affordable. Affordability was one of the factors as well.
Oh, yeah, all our family lived in Washington for 100 years, so my dad, and then we came back.
That's about it.
89 when we graduated, and then military, and then got a job myself, and then came back when dad retired.
And I think, you know, all of your stories are very familiar to other Lacey residents. I don't think any of your stories are necessarily more or less unique. I think that's when we do this type of outreach, that's what we hear from people. I think the one of the things that we'll focus on as we move through the outreach portion here is how is that dynamic changing? Because what I hear from you is that you've kind of lived and worked in the same community, right? Maybe you've done some commuting, maybe you've done some of those kinds of things, but really, you lived and worked here. I think maybe that's starting to change in our community a little bit. And my feeling is, I grew up here, is that Lacey used to be the bedroom community for Olympia. And now I get the impression that Lacey is the bedroom community, not for Olympia anymore, but for Pierce and King County. And so, and when we did the last outreach, we heard a lot of, well, I maybe sleep in Lacey, but that's it, right? I'm not here because I'm on the road at 5 a.m. to go north, and then I'm home 7, 8 o'clock at night. And so I sleep here, but I don't necessarily, engage in the community events and those kinds of things because I'm not here. I'm not coming to council meetings because I'm not here at, 6 o'clock when the council meeting's happening. So, we'll see how your stories compare to the community, but I think the community's chances are it's starting to change. And so, we need to make sure that our comprehensive plan reflects the vision of the council and making sure that people can live and work here. And that's through things like our economic development strategies, how we address affordable housing and a myriad of other things. But keep that in mind as we roll through things.
And maybe we can build in a nightlife.
Nightlife. Yeah. I don't know if we know. Yeah.
Indoor entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Something.
So we kind of touched on both of these a little bit. So both of these questions get back to that quality of life and why you gave the score or rating that you did. Looks like most of the scores were in that good to excellent range. So there might not be a whole lot of negative factors, but we did want to ask the inverse of that first question. What are some of the things that are potentially bringing that score down a little bit more than where it could be, or what's maybe not quite getting up to that excellent or above that for those of you that gave the excellent designation? We touched on that a little bit already in this discussion, but are there any other things that maybe are weighing on that score a little bit?
I think that was what Malcolm talked about. If you're young and you grew up here, you probably don't appreciate those things that, someone who's a little bit older does. So your chance to leave, is a lot higher. So you might be looking for something that is more entertaining. So I definitely think that it is a factor for sure.
And as we grow from, a small town to a medium-sized city, I imagine some of those things will be added, which would be nice to have.
I think one of the things we always tend to have to compete with here is that the uses that might locate here, if we were a little bit more standalone, tend to locate Tacoma, Seattle area. So I'll use maybe the Bellingham area as an example. Bellingham is far enough away from Seattle that it's not an easy 30-minute hour maybe commute away. And so Bellingham tends to get those kind of standalone uses that we don't, even though there's a lot of parallels between Bellingham and Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater area. I think our proximity to Seattle always means that we're in constant competition with uses that may want to, take advantage of a higher population base to the north.
The problem with that though is that easy hour commute, you can't really do it in an hour.
No.
It's an hour and 30 plus,
Yeah.
depending on time of day, it could be 3 hours.
Right, and you have to build that in, no matter what you're gonna go do. If you wanna go watch a baseball game, a football game, anything, you gotta build in that 3 hours.
You gotta give yourself 3.
Yeah.
To be safe.
Okay. Any other responses on this one?
I think for me, the walkability and Lacey doesn't have a one downtown. Like the nice thing about Olympia is that I can walk all over Olympia downtown. I can get to 150 different businesses with a 10-minute walk, and I work down there, so I walk around on my lunch hour. And I would walk around in Lacey more, but I live in a neighborhood that's a little further away, so I can bike to pretty much everywhere in Lacey. But walking is not realistic most of the time.
I think it kind of is related, but maybe not quite. But Lacey has a small lack of identity in the way that maybe Olympia does. You say Olympia, people know what Olympia is, or Tacoma. And so for some people, Lacey might just be like any other town. They could be like Tumwater, they could move somewhere else. But the people who generally here for a while, really, they get the city, they get who we are. But for someone who doesn't quite get that, maybe they don't have a reason to come or to stay.
Okay, now we're gonna pivot a little bit, and start talking about some of the comp plan elements. So as Ryan, referenced earlier, there's a pretty wide range of things that are required based on the Growth Management Act, but the big ones are summarized here, kind of in their it's called elements. So we have the land use element, housing element, transportation, climate change and resiliency, and economic development. Those are kind of the meat of what this update is gonna be really constructed around and the focus of it. So we are gonna run through each one of these. But the land use element really acts as the community guide for discussions about when, where, and how future development takes place. It is our zoning map is one example of that, but it's much more than that, and it's kind of how we plan for the future, how we project growth and make sure that we have the capacity to support that. So the question that we have here is, what priorities should we have for the land use portion of the comp plan? And again, these ones are gonna be the word cloud style, so you can, I think you have up to 3 different entries if you want to, but they can be longer or shorter answers, whatever it seems to match this, but we're just looking for some general high-level guidance on when you hear about land use within a comp plan, what does that mean to you, or what focus should happen? We're starting to see some of the same themes that we've already talked about a bit here. And really one of the big takeaways of land use is that it is kind of the glue, if you will, that kind of ties all of the other elements together. It's kind of what a lot of these other things are built from, but we see things like sustainability, which has its own potential element. Walkability, which we already kind of hit on a little bit. Mixed use, looks like that's shown up a couple times.
So sustainability is a pretty broad topic. It can encompass a lot of different things. If, you know, for those that maybe said sustainability, what on the land use side of things, kind of what are those ideas that make for a more sustainable community that might help put a little finer point on that broad topic of sustainability?
It's density and it's alignment with our climate mitigation plan. So zoning in a way that, you know, creates that density, incentivizes the development of more housing closer to urban centers so that communities are more walkable. That's what it means to me.
So kind of getting the most out of a piece of property, out of a piece of land. So you're talking about higher density, those kinds of things that then create a more walkable community that has amenities close by and those kinds of things.
Instead of spreading out, which is resource intensive over the long run. We have to stretch sewers out and, you know, power infrastructure, and then people have to drive further to get into town.
Anybody else, anything that they put up there, any?
I think a lot of them go back to that same thing. You look at, you know, mixed use zoning kind of gets to that same point.
Yeah.
More walkable gets to that same point. It's all about building that density within the you know, in the city rather than the spread.
Context of that comment about build from the center.
Yeah.
Inspiring going out, so
Creating a downtown where there was now.
downtown-esque.
Downtown-esque.
Like uniformity, you know, you should be able to go to north of the freeway on an arterial and have the same speed limit. And I think we do a good job of that, so when you're in Lacey, without even having to think about it, that you're either speeding or you're not, right? It's pretty much all the same, so. I
So
like
keep
that.
in mind, this is land use, so we'll
No,
talk about
No, I
transportation
know,
too,
but,
so.
but land use goes with planning, just in general, there's no surprises, pretty much, you know what you get when you're in a certain neighborhood or a certain area, that kind of deal, so. I think just, keeping it simple, kind of deal.
What is that design philosophy, the design-based?
Form-based.
Based
Form
on,
based code, yeah, so like even regardless of the use, it's visually similar enough and there's consistency.
Okay. Going on to the housing element, that's another one of the ones that we're gonna be focusing on a lot, as part of this update. And this one is really planning for and accommodating housing that's affordable to all economic segments, promotes a variety of residential densities and housing types, and preserves existing housing stock. Those are some of the kind of high-level themes that you typically see in a housing section, also some of the requirements as part of the Growth Management Act. But same question, but this time as it relates to housing, what priorities should we have for the housing portion of the comp plan? And feel free to either participate by submitting comments or discussing or whatever format feels better.
We need smaller houses. More entry level product. 300,000. Some where we don't have to send people to another place, say you can't afford to live here. Because you have to have 450 to get in. Because that happens here.
I think too, if you look at trend, people are waiting longer to get married, people are waiting longer to have children. So these, 4 or 5, large bedroom houses, like, I think they're gonna make less and less sense over the next 10 years, because the demographics are just changing too, so I think it ties in there.
Yeah, I don't think everybody wants a McMansion, it's just kind of, if for a lot of people, 600 square feet is more than enough. Right? There's a whole, and we don't build those here.
Well,
Fortunately.
that's what attracted us. Yeah, that's what attracted us when we first moved here is the Hawks Prairie area, because you could buy, a smaller first-time home owner at the time, basically house. You get a single family house is a little bit bigger, I guess you'd say. And you could, be in a retirement center, community at the same time. So it kind of ranged, you could graduate in the same neighborhood. It wasn't all, cookie cutter or one size fits all sort of thing. There was options,
Those condos on the limit that are in process, do we have any idea what the price points are gonna be on? Are they?
I know I've seen some signs as I've driven by, it's been a while, and I thought it was like 350 is what kind of comes to the top of my head, but I'm not 100% on that. Somewhere in that range would be,
Condos on the land.
yeah,
Higher, they're more in the townhouse style ones. They're
Yeah.
more in the
400, okay.
And I also think with the apartments with businesses at the bottom, I think that's a trend that's gonna be more and more popular
Mixed use.
over time as well. I think that's a big direction to go in.
Just for your consideration, I think you all may know, but this element of the comp plan is one where we've had the most drastic changes coming from the state that will have to move into this.
Yeah.
So this is really a revamp, this section too, so
Might be even more in a couple weeks.
there might be,
Yeah.
we'll see.
What
9
kind of-
days.
What kind of things are you seeing from the state that's gonna drive?
So some of the conversations we have is we have to look at our housing targets based on income brackets,
Right.
right? So 0 to 30, 30 to 50, 120 plus, and how
Range
does
of
that
housing
relate?
types.
Yep, how does that relate to our housing types? And so those will be conversations we'll be having throughout this process.
And some of that will start setting the groundwork, but then you're starting to benchmarks, and over time, how are the various cities in the state meeting those benchmarks and commenting, and then there could be more efforts from the state level.
I think some of us have seen that through some of our committees, TRPC, most definitely.
Putting forward their buildable land or housing allocations needs
Mhm.
assessment. We're actually gonna be talking about that on Friday.
I saw it at EDC.
Yep, yep. It's part of this conversation and it will get folded into this element as part of those efforts.
The difficulty with all that though, and it goes back to the range of housing types or more of the small houses, the beginner homes, that kind of stuff, is until the developers can make money doing it, they're not gonna do it, right? I mean, the bottom line is the cost of land is so expensive that you're not gonna build a 1,400 square foot house that you can sell for 300 when you can go 2 stories and build a 2,800 square foot house on the same piece of property that you can sell for $500,000. And so we've got to figure out how we incentivize the kind of construction we want. We want that.
It's a cost of land and also materials. And,
Yeah.
especially even with looking at TV and home improvement shows, everybody's getting nice countertops, all these different things. That just also drives that per square foot cost that you can't make up with the smaller houses.
Yeah, so keep in mind, like, a 1,400 square foot house has the same essentially amenities that a 2,400 square foot house. A national home builder is gonna build a 2,400 square foot house because they're gonna make up their profit in those bigger rooms, in those bigger spaces, right? Because the same house that will have, a kitchen, 2 or 3 bathrooms, and 2 or 3 bedrooms. Well, if those bedrooms are large, right, they're gonna make up the profit in those larger rooms. Somebody's gonna wanna pay extra for that 2,400 square foot house.
How much is a building permit in the city of Lacey for a single family residence on a half an acre or a quarter, whatever?
With out the door, probably in the neighborhood of about $30,000.
It's about 33,000. That includes all your connection fees, including lot connection fees, sewer, water.
Got it.
Like
Electricity.
like a $400,000 house, 100,000 of it is permit fees. Now, I don't know if
There's
that's,
no way.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there's-
if they're talking Thurston County or.
I've heard a similar thing.
So,
But
so
it's not-
Olympia,
it's not accurate.
Elmwater and Lacey, because there, it's really about the same. Depending on what you're looking at, but it's generally like 33, 35, and 36 between the 3 jurisdictions. And some of that's driven by, your water connection, because we have a different well system and sources than say Olympia, but then there's other ways that the impact fees are more in other places. So it all kind of balances out to about around the same cost.
But it goes back to that, those costs are the same whether you're building that 1,400 square foot house or that 2,400 square foot house.
Does that include mitigations?
Yes.
Is there any precedence for cities saying you can't build big houses? Like, has that been done where regardless of the lot size, in this area, we want smaller, single family homes?
I don't know about requirements, but I know there's like been incentive basis, like using different types of programs, like you can get more density if you do cottage style or, those type of things.
Is that like, short of that, you're absolutely right. Like, what is the incentive for a developer to build a smaller house, even though people need a smaller house?
Yes.
Because they can't
Well, that's
afford a
what we have,
2,400
that's
square
exactly
foot.
what we have to figure out. What's the carrot rather than the stick?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good discussion though. It's good.
The next one we're gonna touch on is climate change and resiliency. As Ryan referenced, this is a new requirement for this update. It's actually broken out into 2 sub-elements. One is greenhouse gas emissions reduction, and the other one is resiliency. And then current guidance as it's written is that this can either be a standalone element, just like the other ones, or this can be worked in throughout the plan, so within each section. I think our current plan is more of, we were a little bit ahead of the game and it was a little bit more worked into different sections. So it wasn't so much a standalone, but 2 different routes to accomplish the same goal, same requirement. But again, our question is, what priorities should we have for the climate and resiliency portions of the comp plan? And again, discussion or comment based. Yep.
I would also, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would also include anything kind of like related to the environment in this one as well. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, related to greenhouse gas emission targets or those kinds of things, but the environment in general. I'll
Forestry plan,
Like what,
wetlands,
trees,
shoreline.
what we're doing with the lighting at the rack and those types of things?
Well, I mean, that's a very specific project for, energy efficiency. So if you're wanting to prioritize energy efficiency, put that in here. Yeah.
So in this case, as we reach for these climate goals, and it sounds like, we're gonna be, the same old materials that we've been using to build houses aren't going to be good enough? Is that what I'm understanding? Like, if we're trying to make houses more energy efficient with a smaller footprint. With a smaller carbon footprint, how do we do that? How does that? I don't understand how that gets accomplished with the same materials that we've been using historically to build the same houses.
Is there a way to incentivize solar panels and being, is that part of this?
Yeah,
I feel like that's something that's
there's a
highly underutilized.
There's a number of incentives out there that are, yes, at the federal level or other levels to incentivize energy efficient house construction and pieces. And I think the materials are there. It's about how they're applied and requiring them to be
Okay,
put
so-
together in a specific way.
So I got a bid for a solar bid.
Yeah.
For a property that I have,
Mhm.
pre-pandemic, 23,000. Post-pandemic, 34,000, same house.
It's expensive
Yeah.
to retrofit. New construction is easier to and lower cost to put it on new construction. So maybe there's a way to incentivize these with new construction over retrofitting older buildings. But it's part of this conversation about what are our policies for climate.
When I think about the conversation that the First and Climate Mitigation Collaborative. Got to know my first time.
Nice.
I'm still working on that one.
What that organization is talking about related to energy audits, right? Like looking at houses. You know, at some point of sale, before sale, when they're doing upgrades to the property, but doing an energy audit so that the homeowner or the potential buyer knows what they're in for, and that homeowner can tell, like, oh, if I got new insulation, my home energy efficiency would go up by 20%, you know, because that's the kind of thing that if you're a newer homeowner, not in the business, you might not know that, but it can make a huge difference. So it's not just solar, it's also things like, is there a big crack under your door that all your heat's going out of? Little things.
Type of heating system you have.
Yeah, don't buy a home heated by oil. That was like one of my criteria back in the day.
So it looks like we have energy efficiency, trees, incentives, building housing near center, so that's.
That route.
We can continue to buy cleaner energy.
Invest that.
Sure, yeah. The next one is our transportation element. And this has to do with developing and maintaining a street network that emphasizes multimodal transportation systems and supports all transportation types. So same question, but this time for transportation.
Is that little light rail train from the east side to, that goes through Mercer Island, is it done? I think is it on 990?
They
That's outside
just
of my
opened that one. I think they literally opened it like last week.
Okay,
I have to Google it.
yeah,
Don't
I
take my
noticed
word
that
for it.
the first place that it was getting service was gonna be Mercer Island. And, you know, because they have the deepest pockets, you know, and it does hit the east side really nicely, you know. How far are we out from that? Like, I mean, yes, we can talk about bike lanes and sidewalks and, you know, as multimodal as we can get, but I don't know that we're gonna reach that level of efficiency in this part of the
Mass
state.
transportation, right? Your
Yeah,
Mass
we-
transportation modes. What's our densities? We need to accomplish that, right?
Yeah, even our $4 billion I-5 plan doesn't include that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Just unfortunate.
Looks like bike lanes. That's a high one. Sidewalks. Multimodal. TSP, is that traffic signal priority?
Big nerd.
So this on intercity transit authority have anything to do with it?
Perhaps, yeah.
How much longer is intercity transit without fees? Is it, are we at year three?
Never gonna have.
Cause it was a 5-year thing at first, right?
Wasn't they, because of COVID, they extended it and then year or two. So I think we're probably coming up within a couple of years of evaluating it. We're gonna be having a retreat before too long, and I think evaluating the impact on the budget will be part of that, but.
And then you said that there was 5 hydrogen buses ordered? Or was it?
Yeah, they got some grant money, and hydrogen fuel cell is the direction that they're leaning and going, so they've got, as a pilot, they're getting 5 hydrogen buses to test them out and see what it's like.
Fuel cell buses can go a lot further. The delivery system for the fuel hydrogen isn't very built yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, there's
The infant stage, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the sources of hydrogen right now are dirty. It's gray hydrogen. That's not great.
And I think we've done a great job with our trails and stuff. We just expand and upgrade them, and I mean, it's just get out of the mind of just moving people, and you're doing goods and services and healthier.
Yeah, I think there's oftentimes talk about expanding the trail system, and we have, I'll say relatively limited opportunity to do any further expansions in Lacey. I think, you know, we have obviously the Shayless Western Trail, the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail, the William Ives Trail, and some others. But you know, we're in a relatively built out community at this point, and so our ability to connect more with trails is gonna be somewhat limited. And so, you know, when we looked at it through our pedestrian bicycle plan, and really, I think the only real extension we have is to the east, out the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail past the community center as a priority area. Obviously maintaining what we have, but just understand that, you know, people are very much like our trails, but we have limited opportunity to expand them here.
What is that trail? It's a DOT
The
right of way
I-5,
trail.
DOT
I-5 trail.
That is part of the I-5 trail that would go up toward Walmart if it was extended.
That was a regional transportation plan that would carry it up all the way up to Pierce County.
Be real cool if that got built.
Can I go back, just kind of plant a seat on the transit conversation, because just kind of remind council too that pre-pandemic, it was a priority to try to expand transit up to the northeast area. And through the whole revisiting the transit strategic plan, and where we had the fair discussion, they also included some routes that went up there. And I'm not sure if they're still running those routes or what the ridership is, but is that still a priority, kind of expand transit up to the northeast area where you have your employment and your residential that's been building out on the north side of the freeway? And so that's something too that should be talked about. You know, we talk about rail, and that's always a topic, but we also have our local transit system. How does it get to the best bang for the buck and most efficiency for getting connections for people?
Well, it's still going up there, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's Route 65 that goes out to Wilkes-Barre.
It was always that struggle, because right when they expanded, it was a big deal for the region, but then the pandemic hit, and then
Right.
it was kind of got modified. Then we had, also the DDI was being built at I-5
Yep.
interchange, and that caused a route disruption as well, so. Right as it was launched.
Some of the,
Been to a couple of meetings so far. Now that I'm back on New City Transit, but one of the things that I've asked them to take a look at is workforce of the future, because I think a lot of our routes are planned around state workers and, you know, getting to these office buildings. But these office buildings are, you know, not full anymore, and so, I mean, how do we make the best use of that and get people where they need to go?
And that was just illustrated in an article about the business along Plum Street and the state offices across the street from
Yep.
them, and their changed dynamics.
I think the Martin Way corridor study is gonna help like clean all that part up. It's gonna, we'll see, but
We did a study of that a few years back, and before you weren't on council yet, but we've done that study. And
It's-
we're doing the same study again.
that's a
We've done
second study.
What is the status of that? Is it?
that. I'll tell you the story about that when we're not in a meeting.
Because it would, of course, it'd be nice to see bike lane all the way up and down. You know, that particular corridor.
Mhm.
I do live in Hawks Prairie, so I get the added benefit of all those really nice bike lanes out there. I love them. I use them. I have a Cannondale. It's fun. But then I go down to the rack and I take a ride at that elementary school. It gets a little dangerous out there.
Silicon? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little risky on that section. Then you get down to Pacific and and it's good again for a minute. It's just.
Lane is just a drainage ditch.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, a little bit of a shoulder and a ditch.
Skinny tires don't really work well for you anymore. Yeah, the last one from this section is the economic development element. This one really seeks to ensure a healthy economy that is characterized by quality job creation, retention, and the resources to provide adequate services. That was a high level, but again, our question is, what priority should we have for this section of the comp plan? And these really are based on what you know now, what you know today, what your thoughts are for today. We will be revisiting these things as we work through each section of this later, so. But just as an early high level direction is kind of what we're talking about today.
I'm not really sure how, okay, so when you say priorities for economic development, like what do we want to see here? How do we want the tax structure to be? It's a broad stroke.
Yeah.
And it almost sounds as if it's inviting you into, a whole lot of.
Well, I mean, it could be as specific as, hey, we want you to encourage this business. I mean, because economic development is everything from a broad economic development element to implementation of an economic development program, right? So, and everything in between. So you're right, it's very broad, but I heard initially there was some thoughts about maybe encouraging certain businesses that would be open later at night, right? That'd certainly be a part of this. Encouraging businesses that provide, income to the city to be able to fund the city programs to do what the city needs to do. Those are all ideas that are on the table at this point.
Yeah.
And despite what Ryan says, your opinions are allowed to change over time. So if,
We're not locked into these.
Yeah.
Come up with-
Look for one government that's
He holds you to it. Yeah, the other thing that's interesting about the economic development element, whew, that's tough. Is it is not a mandatory element, so this is something we get to do as an option as a community, if it's a priority. So I imagine it is with this group, but if for some reason it felt like maybe we want to focus on the others, that could be something to consider as
Definitely a
well.
priority.
Well, we'll elevate it up there.
So ideally, and I've been talking about this for a while, you guys know that, but something where that captures the attention of, the 12 to 25, 27, 28-year-old people. I know they exist. I never see them outside. Yeah, so I never see them anywhere, and I'm just like, I know we have them. And so as a community, we haven't really provided anything for them to any place for them to get together, anything where they can, just be kids, other than some amazing parks. But when I drive by the parks in November, December, January, February, sometimes March, April, I don't see them. I saw a kid on the bike the other day. I was like, oh my God, a kid on a bike. That's awesome, right?
In February.
Yeah, and so, aside from, providing, something for, Charlie Safari was a
I was
mid,
younger.
it was a mid effort, and that's, those, so aside from that, there's also an economic element to it in terms of, a family's disposable income is dictated by 12-year-olds, right? And so we're not getting any of it, which is unfortunate because we have a lot of it here. At $450 as a minimum to get into live in this community, the disposable income of a family that can afford a $450,000 house is pretty good. But we make sure that they leave this county to go spend it because we have yet to provide anything. And that piece of the economy, those dollars is where we miss out the most. But we have like so many grocery stores. I mean, there's really a lot of restaurants. If you wanna eat, this is a place for you, right? But if you actually wanna do something fun, we're missing. Right. We're missing.
If you look at the demographics of JBLM and all that sweet, sweet disposable military income.
Yes.
That I used to love.
Yes.
If you look at or do a study on what type of businesses they are gonna try to patronize, that's income that's coming from out of the community that would drive revenue here. And so I think that's a big focus is what is going to not only keep somebody here who lives here, but what type of businesses are gonna draw people here? And if you just look at those demographics, that's the vast majority of people who are gonna come south instead of going north to Tacoma or higher. That's gonna be the biggest chunk of revenue we can.
And the coolest thing about it is, you know, we have 300, they have 700. That's 1 million people and we're right on the border of them.
A lot of it's sticker shock though, so it scares away.
So we have an audience of 1 million people and that doesn't even include the people that are just passing through on I-5. And we have yet to capitalize on any of that.
And so what I hear is when we say we haven't capitalized on that, what I'm also hearing is the private sector hasn't capitalized.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, and now it seems as if the tribe is in position, should their trust paperwork work out. They will be the ones in position to capitalize on those dollars.
So, right, and that's part of the challenge, and what
My
we looked
partner with
at for a long time is one, you need to, that private sector, you also need the place and space, and that's where like the Hawkesbury Business District's always been that future idea of having to create the spaces for those type of uses to occur. And then also looking at the Midtown area as we look at transforming and create placemaking. So you have those synergy of uses that starts creating that district type of feel of proximity of uses. But how do we, again, encourage and identify and work with the private sector to make sure they're aware of these gaps and, those type of opportunities that could be out there over the horizon. Well,
How
just
do
put
we
a year on it.
advertise the demand? Can't just put up a shingle and say, I'm looking for family recreation. Like, how do we tell
Recon.
businesses?
There's a big conference every year that, Rick's
Vegas.
been to it.
Oh,
I've been to it for a
You go
lot
to
of years. And
Okay.
that's one of the challenges.
No, there's-
And one of the challenges to that is you need to go there with the willing property owner and the willing developer to be able to help. Cause you're not gonna be driving that connection deal. You can introduce, you can, show city support, the city vision, but ultimately you need to have the deal makers there willing to make that.
Usually once you get one, sometimes they start to grow upon each other because they create this environment around each other. So setting that stage to get that first business that's willing to take that leap, sometimes that's your catalyst to get the others to start coming that don't necessarily compete, but create that synergy together.
An example
Some
of
of that may
is,
get spurred when the tribe actually breaks ground on.
Yep.
Well, and the tribe's been talking to, from what I understand, they've been talking to Topgolf.
It's great,
Top golf.
It's awesome.
I've got another Topgolf site now.
and what Vanessa just described is what we had with Cabela's. Unfortunately, we had the recession hit right after that, and
Yeah.
that's what changed the dynamic.
But I mean, we're also competing with the Bellevues. And so, those developers are gonna go to the projects with the extra zero and the bigger profit margins, more than likely. So, we just have to
But we have good.
figure out how to get them down here.
But
We have good market attributes, but it's also matching it up with the right users, the developers, and then to identify based off their national standards, what the demographics here. And also identifying too, that there's multiple markets within this area, versus the west side of Olympia to where Lacey is. There's two different markets there that people don't
Well, and
really.
we know people want to come here. This is a sweet spot.
And I think, you all talked on, it takes 3 hours to get to Seattle now.
And back.
Maybe that's a benefit that we can start capitalizing on as this dynamic changes from an economic development perspective. Everybody's gonna drive there. Well, now maybe folks aren't that interested in doing that anymore. And that's kind of changing the culture around what folks do and then elevates our opportunities.
Yeah. And that's not the only place that we're missing out on dollars. It's just the place that I've been focused on the most.
Mhm.
Do you know if the tribe is any closer to, the tribe is any closer to deciding which direction they're gonna go with Quaaludes?
No, because they're still in the, probably the first, I'd say, third of the process of the Fee to Trust application with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And they're going through the environmental review analysis, and we haven't seen like I almost said, it's the NEPA documents to come out. We haven't seen those yet, and that's where they're doing doing that work. I think once they get probably further along in that process, then they'll start looking at what their plans are, and they probably want to start doing some outreach and recruitment here in the next, 6 to 12 months, just to see who's out there and interested. It'll take a little bit of time.
Yeah, they're probably a few years from breaking ground,
Yeah.
right? At least 3 years probably from breaking ground than anything.
I'd say as a conservative, I guess, yeah. It all depends on how quickly that process goes
I
through.
said 18 months just for the permitting.
Yeah.
6 months ago.
2-3 years before this.
But in terms of economic development, though, you talked about the services, the retail. But what other aspects of economic development are you want to see talked about it within the economic development element? Because again, this is one of those pieces that sets the stage for the land use and housing, it all ties together. Is it also looking at workforce development? Is it working at opportunity for small business startups? I mean, these are all things that council in the past has looked at as and supported. How's that look going forward? And what do you see are maybe gaps in those arenas, or things that should be emphasized, or opportunities?
We also need the ability, I think, to buy bigger ticket items in the city. So car is a good example, right? There's not a car dealership in the city, not even a used car dealership, let alone a new car dealership within the city limits.
Mack truck dealership.
And that's brand new, and that's gonna be great, I think that'll be great. But I mean,
But you're right.
that's the huge driver for Olympia, for Fife, for places that, aren't any bigger than us, but have considerably more per capita sales tax revenue. Because you can't spend I mean, it's as much as I try to spend my money in Lacey, you can't. You can't buy a men's suit in the city. I mean, since the guardsman closed,
Yeah.
you have to go to Olympia or Tacoma to buy a suit.
Yeah, most of the other jurisdictions have really taken full advantage of their I-5 frontage, right? We haven't. It's just being honest.
I think we need a food truck park that's accessible from I-5 for everybody who's on base or in Olympia. I think Portland has a million great examples of those.
Yeah.
I think those little micro businesses are going to be more and more prevalent moving forward.
Yeah.
So I think really designating an area where we could accomplish that would be a big benefit to the city.
Portland's was so awesome that they had a Netflix special,
They have like
and I
18
ended
of
up
them.
driving down there that weekend.
Do we have,
See, but you have to go to Portland, or you have to go to Seattle, and no one wants to do that.
Right.
I'm not hopping in the car and going to Portland or Seattle. Well, I'd rather do it here. People
I dragged my whole
outside of
family.
here want to do it here.
We have a commercial kitchen, because running a business out of a food truck or popping up a tent requires a commercial kitchen.
They were,
That's-
they
And we
were
have
built,
them-
they were building one in the plaza where Walgreens is. I don't know if it ever opened though.
That is something we had talked about,
yeah.
like doing kind of a maker space for commercial kitchen, I think would be a.
That's one of the things that we've been focused on in the last economic development, and trying to figure out where we can create some partnerships to help foster that.
See, I thought
There is a commercial kitchen in the
Smaller.
Olympia
Westside
Mall.
Mall,
Yeah.
Just open that
Just
Oak
open.
Holy.
but it's also, there's more demand out there, because as you see more trucks, more opportunities.
The one in Lacey was under construction, next in the plaza where the Walgreens is.
But the clock that's never right.
Hmm?
The clock that's never right.
Yes. That would be the one. But there was one under construction though. They actually had some, I just don't know if it, I don't think it ever opened,
I don't think
but it was actually under construction. Speaking of under construction and not opening, whatever happened with the Sears location?
Sarah, do you have a?
That was like
Probably,
gung ho and then nothing.
I can speak, but I think Sarah probably has more detail. than-
The at home, yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I know, so the tenant or the building was constructed, the exterior, addition was constructed, and at home has pulled back. I think they're still moving forward. They contacted us, I think, within the last 6 months about moving their permits forward. But I think that maybe they were, a victim of the economy as well and construction costs. Because there were some construction costs related items to that project that kind of
So
slowed
they did
down.
finish the construction of the building?
The building, the exterior, so the shell
Shell,
and the like parking lot improvements. They did landscaping improvements, and the property owner is the one who did the building improvements, and then at home is gonna do the tenant improvement, and that's what's on hold right now.
So you guys are a whole lot like really super close to this information, this data, where do you guys think we have economic gaps at?
Well, I think you're providing that information right now. I mean, I don't disagree with, you know, the information that the council is all sharing. It's, you know, it's all, you know, we've talked about big ticket items, right? The sales tax base, the entertainment, the dining, those kinds of things that seem to be a gap. And it's reflected as well in the community polling that we've done in the past, which is, you know, which retailers, which restaurants, those kinds of things would you like to see, which is all consistent, right? The challenge is not necessarily identifying who that should be or where they should come from. The challenge is getting them here, right? And like Rick said, it's the three-legged stool of, you know, it's the development triangle. It's that you need a willing property owner, you need a willing developer, and you need a willing city. And for the most part, we have a willing city. In, you know, most cases for everything. We have a willing developer where we can find them. A lot of times what we lack though is that willing property owner. And we look at some significant holdings along Interstate 5 that are locked up with property owners that don't want to do some of these things.
They want us to stay a bedroom
We
community?
had a car dealership that wanted to, I had Rick, you know, met with him with me, but we had a car dealership that wanted to open a new car dealership here. But they needed that I-5 access. They only really two options. Where Sears is, that parking lot's big enough, or the land owned by the tribe. Tribe's not willing, the tribe doesn't sell land. They'll do long-term lease, but they wouldn't sell land.
Right.
And the covenants for the CCNRs for that Sears property, because there's multiple owners.
Yeah.
Doesn't allow for a car dealership, and they weren't willing to even look at adjusting that, because they had a car dealership that wanted to go there.
Yeah, the CCNRs for the Costco, Dave & Buster's, the Costco, Best Buy, little
Lacey
section there,
Marketplace.
Lacey Marketplace. Apparently they only want 20-minute parking there, you know, high turnover. And that was one of the reasons that was quoted to me as why something else, you know, more family fun couldn't go there, because they don't want 1 hour long, hour and a half long parking in their CCNRs.
So you're, so I think part of the challenges we have in trying to make connections and deals, there's a lot of conversations that have to occur and get people on the same page and get to a common vision. Very similar when we talk about ADUs and infill development, but you still have your neighborhood HOAs that have CCNRs that, you know, can create those challenges. But with the economic development strategies, we do have a market study that was done 2021 was finished, a Washington study that also identifies a lot of different things in it. One, updated our predominant job classifications in the area, those basic, general household incomes or pay scales, but also identified where some of our market gaps are and looked at it in relationship to not just a gap analysis or a leakage study of just the Lacey boundary, because if we do that, it all washes out, because we're really strong discount retailers, which makes up for a lot of things, like you say, can't find a suit. But when we look at the larger region, what our potential market share is, then it can identify some of those opportunities. And that's something too that's going to inform this planning update, and also help us with reaching out to property owners and having those conversations about, here's the city's vision, what's your vision, how do you make these things marry up for bringing more reinvestment into the community? But there are also that city also identified opportunity sites as well that we can look at and focus on too. Is, you know, we got the stuff we have currently we're working on, but what do we need to be paying attention to in 5 or 10 years?
And that's why I think just focusing on making sure that we have every developable area along the I-5 corridor and work with everyone who own lands there. And like you say, you go to a conference or you go to something, just make sure that if there's an opportunity that it can be taken advantage of, and really just make sure that we keep business on I-5 and easily accessible.
So let's move on. We're almost finished tonight. Next, talk about community engagement.
Yeah, we're pivoting a little bit here. This next three questions are gonna have to do with community engagement. Growth management actually states that early and continuous public participation is key when you're going through the process of updating the comprehensive plan. So we have a couple questions on, are there target audiences or who should we reach? So this first one is, are there any specific groups we should be including in our outreach? So we have a lot of the usual suspects, but we want to hear from you if there's any others that we want to make sure that we're including that we may otherwise miss.
Who are the usual suspects?
JB Lam military.
Yeah, so I mean, we have quite a few different, all of our HOAs is an easy one that anytime that there's a big update, they all have communication channels.
School district.
JBLM, as you were talking about, we have a pretty large military community here in town.
Schools.
Yeah, we have different avenues that we reach out through, but mostly want to hear at this point, are there any that you want to make sure that are included in that process? We're also in, one of our first steps is gonna be developing a community outreach plan for the comprehensive plan. So any feedback that you share as part of this discussion will definitely get worked into that.
Spanish and Korean. I think we need to make sure that they stay informed, because maybe if they don't read English or whatever the case may be, and they're not communicating in English, I want to make sure that they are.
Yep, we're already planning on that, so we're hiring a consultant that has folks on staff that will be able to translate everything into those languages plus more. We're also focusing on, underrepresented communities, so that's another thing, another focus of this update is to engage people that aren't typically engaged in these type of processes. And so that's where we're gonna be utilizing the expertise of our consultant to help us engage those folks, identify those folks, and then engage with them, going to where they're at. So a lot of times in the past, we've, held community meetings, you come to City Hall, do those kinds of things. Those have had limited success at times. I think our real success has been in going to where people are already at, right? So that's things like, city events, events at Hunter Park, the barbecue festival, 4th of July or 3rd of July, fireworks, those kinds of things. We've done the road shows in terms of taking our planning commission, on the road. We've, so they hold meetings in amongst the community. We've done, the Rotaries, the Kiwanis, those kinds of folks as well. So that seems to be really where we get the biggest bang for our buck, is to going where people already are.
The business community, I think, needs to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Through the chamber or whatever.
Places like the Community Action Council, CYS, people who have access to a lot of people or serve a lot of people. I think they should definitely be added.
I think when you reach out to the business community, obviously the Lacey Chamber, but I think you also need to reach out to the Thurston Chamber, just a much larger base.
Yeah. And sometimes, if we can include the Regional Housing Council for that, and all the permanent supportive housing that we have, because a lot of those people may not be getting the intel, but they may get it from their housing counselor or somebody along those lines, if they're just not engaged in society, and for whatever reason they have. So I think all the permanent supportive housing that's been going up needs to be part of our intelligence strategy, our communication strategy.
So probably instead of the Regional Housing Council, I might suggest like the Housing Authority, those that, give the vouchers and those kinds of things and have the programs. So I've heard Community Action Council, Housing Authority. I think those are the lines you're talking.
As long as they're communicating with Days Inn and, the place that Olympia put up, because here you have, groups of people who are, just barely no longer homeless. And maybe they're just not engaged. But if they're getting information from the one place that they do stay at, hang out at, spend most of their time at, I don't know if we have build a network where these institutions are talking to one another, sharing information with one another. But there is a segment of the population that is just not interested in any of this.
Well, that's,
Maybe the hospitality.
your opportunity, your audience could be like the operators, the Interfaith Works, the ones that operate. Lehigh.
Yeah.
The ones that are actually operating the facilities and also building it, like the Housing Authority habitat of those various. Absolutely.
And similar question, are there any specific events we should be including in our outreach? So Ryan touched on this a little bit, that one of the things that we've been doing is going to where people already are located. So instead of trying to bring everybody to City Hall, we attend the big community events where there's already a large audience. So it takes a lot of that legwork or that effort away from the community and puts it on us to actually reach out and make that connection. It's a lot more accessible in that sense, but with that in mind, are there specific events that you want to make sure that we have a presence at or that you've enjoyed in the past that you've had great success with communicating with the community?
Like National Night Out is always good.
Yeah, it's spread out though, hard to do.
You can add the LTAC
Local
events.
locations, but so Ryan mentioned a lot of them, but Thurston County Fair.
So, yeah, most definitely.
So there are events outside of Lacey, like going to the farmer's market in Olympia or other places as well as our own large community events.
For that last question you had, can we include the tribe in that?
The target outreach go out.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry, Carolyn.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, there's other opportunities too, you know, there's a couple of brew fests, you know, that happen that would be, you know, those kinds of big things that draw a large amount of people. Is Lacey doing one?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That was a Rotary project in Chamber and I'm not sure, I didn't have it last year, but I think it might be recouping for this year.
There was that cider fest. I don't know if that.
Yeah, all the LTAC events.
You know, Polyfest and
Cultural festival.
Maybe the senior games.
Parks and Recs has a pretty good reach.
It would-
Yeah, we like to use the, you know, Parks and Rec is ready-made for these types of events, that's for sure. So, yeah, happy to.
Senior center, because that's another growing part. I mean, that's the fastest growing part of our population, the seniors. I think we need to have involvement from them.
Another thing, you know, just to consider is, you know, the youth part of this as well has been a difficult part of how we you know, we haven't really been able to engage the youth very well. So, you know, may look at trying to partner with Northwest Public Schools and figuring out a way to be able to, you know, get some inroads there as well. Because,
Our youth council in the event that they're planning right now,
right,
Youth Summit, yeah.
the youth summit, that
Yep.
might be a way to get more of that youth input.
right.
Because they're a tough group to get input from
Yeah.
typically.
Yep.
They're important.
It's
Next
who we're building it all for,
next 20
right?
years, yeah.
It won't be for us in 20 years, it'll be for them.
I mean, we've got the gardens and Puget Sound just right down the street.
Yeah, the St. Martin's have like a, well, I guess it would be in the fall, but a welcome back students kind of event where families and students are roaming around in a festival-like atmosphere. We could have a booth at. Maybe they have one of those in the spring.
You know, Evergreen has one like that. Second, third week of September.
St. Martin's must do something for you.
They do, and then there's also an aspect too of St. Martin's where you talk with the student recruitment sections. They want to be able to know what's going on or what could be in the future, have input, what could draw more students to this area to be here and stay. And so there's the students, but then there's also the faculty side too, the admin side.
I'd like to add our Commission on Equity as one of the groups that should be contacted.
For sure, and we have the benefit of all of those different commissions that the council has appointed that we didn't have 10 years ago. So the Youth Council, the Commission on Equity, and then, you know, our other, you know, obviously Planning Commission, but Parks Board and Historic Commission as well. So yeah, we have some really good benefits there to utilize some great groups that have been established.
Yeah, because that's a pretty broad spectrum of the community when you put all of those different boards and commissions together.
Pop-up, I'm just probably thinking about the pop-up markets or food truck.
The night markets.
I'm gonna keep moving a little bit here. We have two more questions left for you guys. What is your preferred blend of outreach? So we kind of touched on this a little bit. This one's a little bit different. We have two different axes here. One is attending events, which we were talking about. So going out to already existing events that are happening out in the community. At the other end of that line is hosting events. So that's trying to encourage folks to attend events here at City Hall. And then on the other horizontal axis, we have virtual online versus in person. Just in your experience, what has been kind of the right blend of styles of outreach that really kind of reaches the broadest spectrum and has the most success at engaging community members? And you have the opportunity to drop a dot somewhere on this. And by voting, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're not gonna do the other ones, but just in your experience, what does that right blend look like?
And this one you'll want to use your devices for. So looks like we've had 2 responses. So at this point, it looks like 4, most people, we're gonna go right in the middle of the bullseye.
Perfectly in the middle.
That
is in large
We've
part.
seen over the years, I mean, in my time on council, what I've seen is we don't do a very, not that we don't do a good job of trying, we don't have much success in hosting events. We just don't get a turnout. We don't get enough representation to really move the needle at all. So I think you almost have to go to events to get that, because at least that's what I've seen over the last
Until we
13
did
years
the
that I've been
the-
here.
Remember
No one
the ADU
comes.
thing, the ADU thing that was here?
Yeah.
It was packed.
Yeah, that was the rare occurrence. So I mean, if you look over the years.
That was a targeted outreach to present something.
Right.
Right.
That
that got mailed out to them.
You know, it's just, we've struggled to get people to actually show up. Really struggled.
So show up the 3rd of July, so.
That's a little different.
I know, but
That's
saying,
getting them to come here to talk about.
they,
the company.
they hear about it, it's just
This
getting.
will be your
them to
first
come.
3rd of July, won't it?
It will be.
Oh, man, you're in for a treat. All right.
I thought of another event, Arbor Day. Lots of people come out to get free saplings.
We're standing in line, you gotta ask half the
Yeah.
audience.
Get them.
Let's fill out the
Survey those
before you get
people.
your tree.
Yeah.
All right.
Survey new tree.
How many visits do we get to the city's Facebook? I know I look
Well,
at
I'm
it.
not the right person to ask about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
How many
How many
Is the
followers?
question, Councilmember,
just-
how many unique visitors or is it how many
How many
followers?
followers do we have engaging with us?
We could certainly get that data to you shortly.
All right.
Yeah, and then the last question that we have for tonight is, this update is a success if. So kind of everything we've talked about tonight, but then also big picture, what does success look like for this update to each one of you?
We see a lot of stuff come in front of us. So the successful stuff is the stuff that actually happens. So, but you know what? When people come up to me and say, I heard about this, or I heard the city's doing that, then it feels like success. You know, or if they, you know, you get a lot of questions, well, what's going over there? And what's that, you know, and what's that gonna be? Okay, you saw something, but I heard that I can be on a commission and actually get paid. Like food money or gas money. Really, you engaged, nice. You know, that feels like success.
Real quick, number of followers on our city Facebook page, 14,000.
Pretty good. That is good.
25%.
That's
25% is good.
We should definitely be using that. in
Yeah,
outreach.
and that's where.
That's significant.
We have those followers, and then also anytime that we do some kind of social media push, we also get to see how much reach that individual push has. So anytime anybody views that or engages that or clicks on a link that was provided as part of that and follows that through to, say, the city website or whatever page it might be connecting to, so. We can do that at kind of the broad scale, but then also individually, anytime that we promote something, we can see how much reach and traction we're getting.
Did we include the VCB for our outreach stuff? Did we say that? Okay.
We didn't say it, no, but yeah.
That's part of our outreach strategy is VCB.
Any more for this one here? Looks like we have maybe a few more coming in. And you can do multiple, so not necessarily one answer over another. Right, and then we do have, it looks like around 8 or so, 9, 10 comments in here. And then this one, we actually do have an opportunity just to do some upvoting. So any of the comments that were submitted by any of you, any of those also kind of echoed with anybody else or something that maybe you agree with? I think you have a couple, I think you up to 3 votes to maybe elevate some of the ideas that have been suggested.
Good job.
I think you get 3, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think you could put all 3 on one though, right?
Yeah.
I tried
Wait your, you can wait your voice.
All right, we've got 1 person that's voted. You used up 1. 2. 3. Almost feels like a retreat. Huh? Tuesday night retreat. One more?
No, these are specific to this survey, so.
Any other last ones?
Mine says voting results not shared yet, so.
Okay. Might need.
Oh, that's me, sorry.
Okay, there we go.
So you
6.
used all your votes.
It's gonna be an
I was
unveiling.
like, oh, I'm
All
done.
right. So looks like good community buy-in, more nightlife, affordable housing options, engagement. Some of the common themes that we're seeing throughout there. So, yeah, that's what success in this plan looks like. I think that's everything that we have for tonight.
So given we elevated the community buy-in and knowing we're gonna have a community engagement plan we'll bring before you, just for this council, what, in terms of thinking about this process, I mentioned at the beginning, this is gonna be a year-long plus process, right? We got 6 extra months, so it might take a little bit longer so we can make sure we get that community buy-in. What touch points in your mind do you think would be appropriate in terms of cadence to bring this back to you all as we move through this process?
I'd like to know when community outreach events are happening,
Okay.
because sometimes I try to attend those.
Yeah, just kind of a briefing,
You know, like,
moving.
we're gonna go gather feedback on the comprehensive plan at Arbor Day.
Okay, cool. Well, we would love to help you, have you all spread the word.
Yeah.
So,
I'm more into the numbers and the stats.
okay,
How many people, how many, engaged, how many showed, how many voted, how
And
many.
what they have to say.
so coming back maybe after the engagement process to report out in
Absolutely.
terms of what we heard. Okay. We'll end up with draft policies at a certain point as well, so that might be another touch point as we start to draft the policies and see what they, as they form up after we get through the engagement process.
I think more often is better for
Okay,
engaging us, because I'd hate to see you go too far into the drafts and put a ton of work in and come back and it not be what we're looking for.
absolutely.
So I'd rather have eyes on it on a more regular basis if possible.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
And with some of the outreach activities, it may be things that we can help promote.
Yes.
Drive people to, so.
yes, we will want that. The larger the spread, the more people hopefully will get engagement with, and then that would mean the plan will represent the community even better.
Yeah, I think that's an important component kind of in council's role in all this process, as well as pushing and advocating to the community and get engaged, participate in why. It's one thing to rely on a social media push or other target, but word of mouth has always been a good method.
I think also though what Robin said, being at some of these events
Yep.
and stuff too, because, to engage with the people, to find out what it is they want. I mean, that's kind of part of the role I see as a council member is, right, hearing from the public, knowing what they want and advocating for those things. So, yeah, sure.
And considering this plan really sets that vision for 20 years and that blueprint of where we go, a lot of folks, I think they intuitively don't understand how important this step is because it's so far out. You know, they wanna see the Dave and Buster's or the Top Golf and they wanna talk about the specific project, but it's this that lays that groundwork for that success moving forwards. So helping explain and message that would be really, really helpful so we can get that engagement from the
Yeah,
community.
That's really supposed to be our role, right? I mean, the long-term 20-year vision is the role of council. It's not the nuts and bolts and the, you know, which business, that kind of thing, so.
Well, it's just like we talked about, you know, back when I was on the planning council, and we've talked about it since then, but the place where individual residents of Lacey can have the loudest voice, the most impactful voice is now, like in this process. It's not on the individual projects where it's already, the contract's already signed and they're breaking ground. It's
Too late.
now, like, what do you want the city to look like in 10 years or 20 years?
Absolutely.
For sure.
And trying to find the right mix of events where people are willing to take the time to engage with you, because I find that festivals are not that effective.
Yeah.
Really getting those one-on-one conversations that you want to have with it. It's fine for promoting stuff, but
You know, something that TRPC did, which, you know, they put those QR codes on the trailhead. And just says, hey, do you want to engage with us? Okay, and they had some pretty good success with it. I don't know if we do that, but, it could be.
Or at Wonderwood when there's like ball games happening.
Yeah.
Like the Little Lacey, I don't know if they call it the farmer's market, but the stuff they do over there draws quite a few people, and I've seen other organizations there for doing this type of stuff
The
too.
market and the food truck area.
Yeah, they get pretty busy,
The first and last of the month.
and people seem to be pretty engaged, that are there, so.
Post office.
Places where people are waiting. When I do.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when I do them.
You know, hey, take a survey, engage with the city for a minute.
Thanks, guys.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and so moving on to our next agenda item, our 2023 budget encumbrance carryovers. And of course, our finance director, Troy Wu.
Great, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, council.
$50,000 for neighborhood renovations.
Indeed.
Or what else?
Share screen here. It was really fun to watch that interactive piece.
Exact same thing?
Well, I'm going to open up my presentation format that was developed in 1997.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. Use this same format for 3 different organizations.
not sure I didn't.
Very efficient, Troy.
It
I like
is.
the efficiency there.
Well, you don't want your finance people to be too creative.
Yeah.
Consistency is key.
It's a good point. Yeah, no creative financing.
What's our crypto plan?
So the short presentation is, this is an amendment that is really limited to the projects that we didn't complete in the previous year. So none of this hopefully is a surprise to you, but we, from the staff perspective, very much want to complete these, complete the council priorities, complete projects that we already started. So having said that, I do have 12 slides that we'll walk you through. I did want to provide a little background. You know, typically we go to the finance committee, but of course, we no longer have the committee process. So just a little more education on the process as you're going to get to see this up and close and personal. So this is actually a relatively new process for the city, and new, I mean, about 10 years. It was born from the finance committee. In terms of the whole amendment process, we were looking to find ways to be a little more transparent, improve, you know, transparency to the public, to the council, of course. Also as a way to just really preserve the integrity of the budget as we went forward. So in the past, we amended the budget once per year. And so the council didn't really see updates until, you know, August was about the time frame. So we've improved that process, and we come to the council, or previously the committee, more often, just to make sure the council's aware of what is happening, what changes have occurred throughout the year. So we started this process, we started more updates in terms of budget amendments in 2010, and we implemented this process, the carryover budget amendment process in 2011. On the purpose, one of the purposes we have for this specific amendment is at that time, we had some pretty big projects that were happening and we had our budgets were a little bit smaller, so we didn't have quite that capacity. So we were a little concerned that we might start to exceed budget authority. So we wanted to take action earlier in the year rather than waiting until that September timeframe. And really the purpose, like I said, is to make sure that we're able to complete the council's mission. So again, these are amendments that are limited to projects that were previously adopted by the council in the previous budget year. So I'd like to just highlight some of the more significant amendments that are being proposed. You have the full details in the attachment to the ordinance, but again, I just want to cover the high level stuff. I broke this out into kind of different functions, maybe make it a little bit easier for council to follow. We of course have the budget structure and the details, but really I'm trying to group things together, so it might be just a little easier to follow. So social services, pretty significant carryovers being proposed here. The biggest being the regional permanent supportive housing. The council did authorizing a local agreement last December. So that is just a carryover that amount. We have a couple different amendments related to the Veteran Services Hub, an accessibility project that will happen hopefully this next year or this year. The Veteran Service Affairs lease improvements, that's actually we're just going to complete that project. It's really more of a paperwork issue in terms of the funding that was provided by the federal government. We have $100,000 in there for our commitment to host homes with Together, and then we have $50,000 in there for the study with the YMCA and the school district for the Young Child and Family Center feasibility study.
So the Veteran Services Hub, and the lease improvements, I should know this, but I don't. Are we leasing that building or do we own that building?
No, that is owned by the community college.
That is owned by the community college. It's on their parcel.
Correct. So these are more like, think about tenant improvement type things.
Do they want to sell
Not that I know of.
it? No.
Is the $450,000, are we installing an elevator or do we know?
That's I think that's the majority of the project. I think there's some parking lot improvements that are included with that as well.
Councilmember Vasquez, I can provide a little bit more detail on it. So the idea is, yes, it's going to be, the bulk of it is the elevator. And this was something that was planned during the last round of improvements. However, we just didn't have sufficient funding at that time. And so that is going to be the priority. We're also going to be doing some upgrades, hopefully to the parking lot, like Troy mentioned. And in addition to that, we're going to be doing some upgrades to some of the features inside of the facility to make some of the doors and other types of features automatic.
So the Young Child and Family Center feasibility study, so that's for the Bucknell ball fields. Is that is the one? And then I tried to get this answer from NTPS, but I didn't get a clear answer. So when I counted up the proceeds that should come out of this last levy, and I know it's a replacement levy, and I know that but it was fairly substantial. I think it came out 286 million. If I did my math right.
Yeah, I'm not
So
somewhere familiar with.
somewhere in that ballpark. And then my question was, would a portion of that be dedicated to this endeavor? And I was told yes. But that was about as much as I got out of that conversation. And if so, I'd like to know, if I can, how much of that levy are they willing to put towards, this project, if, and so I know that might be a tough one to answer, but that's.
I can answer it in a general, about what Councilor Green said.
I was just gonna say that maybe, I don't know the details of the numbers, but the school district has committed, they are building the part that's for the education part, for the preschool education part. They're building that regardless of what we do or the Y does with them. So if we do it together, then we're talking the bigger project of having, you know, the indoor
Recreation.
pool and the whole recreation, all that. But the educational piece, they're building either way,
Yep, the early
whether
learning
we do it or
center.
not.
And so the partnership with the Y and the city potential is to add the public portion on to expand that footprint to add the indoor, outdoor, water, feature pool.
All the extras.
And the after school care that the Y would provide, but
It'd be such a missed opportunity if we didn't go with that one.
Right.
Yeah, the question right now is the why though. They don't know yet. They have to figure out if they can do it, if they can come up with the money or not for their piece.
All right.
and then you start looking at.
Yeah, we,
priorities
that's our
too.
part too, yeah. School districts are definite though, on their part of it.
All right.
Economic development, of course, you know, our focus here recently has been the Depot District as well as Lacey Midtown, so we do have some $50,000 in there for branding of the district, and then we just have really a holding place in terms of economic development investments that we might identify for the council going forward. It's about $463,000. Public safety, just you know, a few items there for public safety. We will note that the highlighted number there, that's actually an increase from what you have in your packet. I inadvertently left off the fleet portion of the camera, so our program is a 5-year installment situation in terms of these cameras. So for the next, well, I think the body worn cameras are through 2026 and the fleet cameras are through 2027, so we're making basically 5 equal payments through those years.
So did we purchase them all and we're just paying off the purchase over the course of a few years?
Right, it's
It's actually a lease through Axon and they upgrade as the technology improves, they replace the cameras as part of that lease.
Oh, that is nice.
So the problem with buying technology like this, it changes so rapidly. The police departments that have purchased their cameras are finding out that the technology very quickly gets outdated and they have to replace that system. So it's actually better to lease, get the improvement program.
Like driving a new car off the lot.
Close.
So that's the lease payment then?
Correct.
So why is that a carryover then? Because won't that be every year for for the indefinite future, right? Because as long as we have them, I assume we're gonna be making lease payments.
yeah, I just missed that in the budget.
Oh, okay.
We actually had a lump sum in the 23 budget. We didn't know exactly what that contract was going to look like, so there was 650,000, give or take a few that were actually in the budget, so I just wanted it in place, again, kind of to preserve the integrity of the budget, so, yeah, great question. You know, throughout the growth of the department, we developed implemented a budget line item to address, you know, supplies, weapons, vehicles, computers, and that's what you're seeing there in that $64,000 number. Kind of the last of that. In fact, we just bought 10 computers here last month that will pretty much expend that full amount. We missed a 2023 detective vehicle somehow. It was in the budget, but we didn't actually place the order. We'd like to do that, so the detective that was authorized in 23 actually has a vehicle, so that's $80,000 there. There's 653,000 roughly for the police station. That's really just a cash flow issue. That's not a statement that the station is coming in any higher than we thought. In fact, quite the opposite, as you know, with the award of the construction as well as the training center. So when we put the budget together in terms of cash flow, that was before we even knew we were gonna build the training center. So a lot has changed. So that's really very similar to the body worn cameras. We're just carrying over monies that weren't spent to actually even out the budget, so we have the proper amount. Believe it or not, we're still dealing with production and supply chain issues. There's 6 vehicles here that we just weren't able to take delivery of during 2023. They're coming in very quickly now, though, we'll say. So lightnings are coming in very fast.
Just talking to
I
Brian,
heard the reviews on those are really good.
talked to Brian yesterday, and he says, yeah, it's feast or famine. Now we're having a hard time getting them outfitted out and ready to go on the road. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, they're getting them so quickly.
We had a crane truck in our sewer department that same thing, it was a production issue. And then we've just still kind of an ongoing issue with the water meters and the transmission devices.
Yeah, we approved that like last February or March or something.
It's still taking like 6 months to get an order fulfilled. And we also have a storage issue. As we order, 2,000, 3,000 meters, that takes up a lot of space. So we're trying to time those correctly, but that's
The
your.
next phase is gonna be installing them in all the homes, right? Which is a whole nother
That's correct.
step of a project.
Next, we have just a series of capital projects. This is very common. The numbers are larger than you've seen in the kind of the more operations area, but various delays occur. Here's your arterial street, your transportation carryovers for 2023. Just about.
Which chargers are we talking about, location wise?
I believe that is the rack.
Right. See, they're making a lot of
Right, so
way out there.
Are those going into the parking lot that we're paving, the new parking lot?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Your water utility, actually, there's about 20 different projects that we're carrying over some form of funding, but here are your more significant projects listed out separately. So about 7.6 million. Your sewer projects, we've got about 9-10 projects that we're carrying over funding for, about 1.4 million.
So we're easily over 10. What did I feel like that was like 12 and a half.
Not of all the different funds, but yeah, I mean, it's ballpark.
Okay.
So again, these are amendments that were previously adopted. And then even the projects, they have to have the capacity in the budget. So the cash is there. So this is all coming from beginning cash. It's unspent cash from 2023. I'll make the one change to the lease for the body worn cameras and the fleet cameras. That's about a $67,000 increase. But we plan to bring this back to council for consideration next week.
Agreed.
Any questions, any other questions? You may have?
As these dollars, sit there, in their 2023 year, are they in accounts that are interest bearing or are they are?
They are. So you saw the investment report at a recent work session. What we do is we basically pool the 29 funds, make single purchases, and we just divide it out on a whatever ratio of the total cash balances are there. So we're investing long-term about 80% of the city's funds. The other 20% go into more like overnight accounts, but our interest rates are very high right now, so we're doing well in terms of those unspent funds.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Troy. So we just have one quick item from Rick.
Yes, just want to make sure all the council is aware that this Friday, March 1st, we'll be holding our annual employee recognition luncheon, and I'd like to invite council, if you have the schedule allows, to come down and attend. The doors will open at St. Martin's Pavilion at 11 a.m. The lunch will be in service at 11:30. Typically, it's a buffet style lunch. Well, it is not typically, it will be a buffet style lunch. The program for the event will start around 12:15. That's where we'll kind of do some introductions and some thank yous to the group, and then presentation and milestone awards will start right after that. And then we'll end with some games, entertainment, raffles, and entertainment. I think would be spectacular this year. So, which is why we're we're not in the Worthington Center, we're actually in the pavilion, so to accommodate the entertainment, so. So again, I'd like to invite the council, if you're available, to come swing by. I'll send out a reminder email tomorrow, and if you can just respond back, you plan on attending, so make sure that we can get any potential notices, and also just get a head count of who's gonna be there.
It was a wonderful event last year. I can't make it this year. I'll be in California. Sad to miss it.
So, I communicate with Nicole on schedules a lot because I'm, just like you guys, I'm running 2-3 schedules, and she was like, you gotta be there. The employees love interacting with council, and just tell me you'll be there. I'm like, oh, no, I'm gonna be there. Nicole's calm down. So I encourage everybody to go too. It's a cool event.
It is.
Wonderful. I'm sorry, I can't be at this year's, but the reason I came is, I wanted to let you guys know that, on lot, I'm gonna be the new rep to the sea level rise, committee, and they're having a quarterly meeting. At that same time, right in the middle of all that. So, but this, I think, I don't know if Cynthia Pratt was on it, maybe to begin with, but it could be the first time Lacey will have a voice, even though it's a lot, through a lot on that group. So I'm pretty excited to do that.
So, before we adjourn, were you done? Yep. So before we adjourn, I just want to talk about, all the emails and correspondence that we get about the police station and the Shannon, would you mind coming over for just a minute? So we're all responding to emails and I've been responding to the emails too. And I've been trying to express to people that, this is something that we tried to avoid doing. This is something we have literally retrofitted that building, that the current police, building so much that, consultants said, you can't retrofit anymore. You have to do this. Is one of the talking points that I've been seeing in my correspondence with the public. In addition to that, I was hoping to, you guys remember that presentation that Chief gave us with all of the really cool Lacey police stats where, a gun hadn't been drawn in this long. We de-escalated these many situations. I would love to have some of those talking points. And I was gonna ask the chief for those tonight. Brought it up to Rick's attention.
Yeah, we talked about this morning. We'll be putting together some of that information so that we have that to share and share it with the council. So
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with Shannon and Chief about it yet, but that's something that we will be pulling together, that information. So that, again, this is a project that is been long in the works. It's been through a lot of public process, public meetings and conversations. And again, it's get caught up in, I think, somewhat of a national issue because I think a lot of people have not really looked at how the city of Lacey and the Lacey Police Department interacts with the local community and do their work with the community relation-based efforts. So we'll work on pulling that information together and making sure council has those points. But also to directing individuals that are inquiring to our website, because we do have some of this information already on our website as well. So again, and we'll continue to go forward to provide that information to give people as much of what we do here in the city of Lacey as possible.
And Shannon's really good at messaging. So, yeah.
I was interviewed actually by King 5.
I was gonna bring that up next.
Regarding the police station and the protesters and such, but I've been answering every one of those emails as well. And
Same.
the biggest thing I've been pointing out is the one, there's a couple of common themes. I mean, most of them are cut and paste, right? I mean, they're coming from the same information. But big part they keep bringing up is the lack of public process. And I've just been, trying to let people understand that there was a citizens advisory committee. We've had meetings for, 4 years on the topic.
Yep.
Every one of those meetings was right here in an open public meeting that was televised. None of them were in executive session. Not one meeting about the police station's been in executive session. They've all been open televised meetings.
If you look at, if you delved into, at least I have the TikTok videos and the Reddits and that they're putting out just tons of information that it's blatantly not accurate. And I think the point of that is the vast majority of people that are messaging us, they don't really care if we have an answer. So it's kind of a weird place to be where it's like, no matter what we say, they're not. And they don't want there to be any.
And I'm hoping to put some accuracy to it. You know what I mean? We don't have 85 acres to build a mock city for training. We were lucky to get 12 acres. For an office building in a small little range. It's not what is perceived to be. It is not happening here. And we wouldn't even want to attract that type of a situation here anyway. So there's a lot of big misconception out there. Councilmember Vasquez.
I think one of the questions that I've gotten is just what is the budget for it, like where did the money come from? And so that's something that we can answer. But to your point, I've looked at some of the messaging also, and one of the things that stuck out to me is, and they're putting it right next to a library. How could they do this? They're putting it right next to a library. And like the site for the new station is actually a little further away from the library than the current station. So I think you're right. A lot of this is, it's getting wrapped up in a national issue, a concern with a system.
Mhm.
But a lot of folks are getting really outraged about it and they don't know our community at all.
Right.
And so I'm with you that it would be nice to have the opportunity to engage with people who live in Lacey who have concerns about this.
Yeah.
And have conversations. Like I've offered, some folks have reached out to me and said, would you get coffee and talk to us about the police station? 100% yes, of course.
I
Because
see
at
about,
least you're asking me to talk to you.
I see 1,000 people a day at my business. I have had one person ask about it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think there's the overall community outrage that they're making it appear.
Exactly.
So
Quite the opposite.
I feel like in this room, we can deconflict a lot of this. Just by, telling the simple truth about who we are and, we're, our stats are, we're in this top 75 cities to live in the United States, Tree City, all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, I think when it comes to,
I think it
when
comes
it
to,
comes to the national topic, it's about a lot goes into training, and that's what this facility is doing. We're certified,
No problems there.
police
Got a lot of time on your.
Accredited, yeah.
that accredited, that has the best training, and that's what you want, especially in the nationally.
ideally, and so my goal is to get ammo to each one of you guys. That if, when you're responding, that you'll have this ammo to use from city manager's office, from the chief, and maybe even from Dave.
Fact-based
And I-
arguments.
Yes.
I think going above and beyond, it almost, not necessarily focusing on those people who are messaging us from New York or, wherever, but just making sure that we're putting out this information for our residents so they know ahead of time, they're not. So I think that's maybe where if we could do a better job at anything is releasing more very accessible, just like you're saying, those talking points, just making it very, very accessible for our own community members to make sure that they know the
We have a great, easy to find webpage on the city's website.
And we've been receiving phone calls and we've been having the staff direct them to the webpage because it does have some good information. So we'll pull some, baseline information together. And get that out and also resources where people can go, a list of resources where they can go to find more detailed.
Could this
information
go into
about
the next Lacey Life? I know we've talked about it in the water bill Lacey Life newsletter before, but.
And there's two aspects to this as well. And again, trying to get this information out to our community, but also, there is we'll figure out how we can do this strategically to get the information out without, confusing some of the issues.
I really appreciate it, and I think us having that list of facts at our fingertips is gonna be important so that we're consistent in the messaging and people aren't hearing one thing from one council member and another thing from another member, that we need to be,
On
I don't need lockstep in our messaging,
Right.
but consistent with the facts.
Yes.
And if you're looking at your message and you're just not sure, Shannon's a really good person to run it through. We all respond to hundreds of emails every day, but just throwing that out there. So
Also, I'll just ask, keep me in the loop.
Thanks for being here.
she's voluntold.
I mean,
And I'll just reinforce too, that just keep me in the loop and also make sure that, we're having good communication between.
You don't want us including you in our responses.
No,
Okay.
but if you're looking for feedback from the city manager's office.
Oh, yeah.
And was there a small update on Desmond Drive? Did the court procedures end up going through it all or?
The, where that sits is that there is now a stipulation between the DES and the Clayton's attorneys to continue the hearing to March 11th. And then also though, with that, we did verify with Maple Court, they have 12 rooms available that are holding for this.
Great.
There are 10 rooms needed for the individuals on the DES property. It's the original DES list, which has 5 individuals, one couple, and then the the secondary list, the only map list, which has 7 individuals, 1 couple, so you need 10 rooms. So there's enough rooms at Maple Court to accommodate that, but then also this gives time for them to transition, as well as potentially other units more suitable elsewhere that they can accommodate a couple of the individuals. But March 11th is now that new date.
Thank you.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. And if there is no objection, I will call this meeting adjourned.